You should see a little notification pop up here in just a second that the call is being recorded. So just a heads up there. Otherwise, though, you can probably tell by the title of today's call that we're going to be covering guest recovery, something that we do quite often in our restaurants. And honestly, a lot of these principles can be applied to resolving many situations that we encounter, not just necessarily specifically our guests, but also resolving issues between our team members as well. But I don't want to steal all of his thunder. I am very excited to have Nick Rodriguez, our market director out of Southern California, on the line to share this great information with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic on over to him. But hey, Nick, how's it going? Welcome.
Hi, Mary. Thanks for having me. Um,
Thank you for being here. Floor is all yours.
Excellent. Really quickly, I just wanted to kind of introduce myself. I feel like I know everybody here, but if I don't, hi, my name is Nick. I am the market director in Southern California. I've been with PF Chang's for closing in on 19 years. And so I have a lot of experience with guest recovery. I've kind of seen a lot of stuff in my time. And so it's a pleasure for me to come in here and talk to you guys about it. Um, so let's start at the beginning. Um, Guest recovery. When Mary asked me to kind of speak about guest recovery, this was the first slide that she sent me. And I was like, sick. This is exactly what I love doing every day. As you can see, you've got a couple of people fighting here. And that's what you, in any restaurant, anywhere, you get those calls from the guests. There's going to be complaints every single day. And if you want it to be a fight, it can be a fight, but it doesn't have to be. With the right tools, the right responses, the right triggers, you can use these moments as learning moments. You can use these complaints to your advantage, and you really can help grow your business with some experience and some training. Um, Restaurants are going to have complaints. That's just part of nature of the beast. That's what you get. Um, for managers, especially newer managers, it causes a lot of anxiety. It causes a lot of fear. You're afraid to go to tables. Some managers get angry. They don't want to believe that their restaurants aren't perfect. And some managers take it personal. They get really depressed. I know that I've seen managers who they get kind of beat up after two or three complaints. They really take it and carry it with them, and that really weighs on them. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to a lack of training and maybe a lack of experience, because the more that you can kind of get on top of how to have good guest recovery, it becomes something that you can use to your advantage. There are some stats that are pretty shocking. More than 50% of people are willing to pay extra for better customer service. Um, More than 30% of the guests will walk away from a brand that they love if they have a bad experience. And I'm sure that every single person on this call knows of somewhere that they don't go anymore because of one bad experience. I know I have. And then more than 65% of companies compete primarily on the basis of customer experience. We keep track of it ourselves with our social media scores, and it's a really important factor in driving the metrics, because we want to make sure that our guests are happy. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Um, Guest recovery in action. I personally, like I said, I've been with the company for 19 years. I've seen a lot. And when I think about guest recovery, I can specifically remember a time that I had a manager. I wasn't working that day, but I came back to work after a couple of days off, and I got an email from a guest, and they were super upset because they said that their experience top to bottom just wasn't right. The server didn't come by for 15 minutes. The drinks took too long once they finally got somebody. The food took a long time. They asked a manager to speak to a manager, and the manager that I had on duty, he came by. Um, he comped a few drinks, and then that was kind of the end of it. He didn't go back and talk to the table. He didn't apologize. He really didn't do anything. He just thought that comping a couple of Mai Tais was going to be sufficient for taking care of the guest. And at the end of the day, it just wasn't. That wasn't the point necessarily that they were looking for. They wanted to have a conversation. And so I had to have that conversation with the manager, and it said, how do you actually recover a guest? Well, there's a method for it, and it's just comping a couple of drinks and expecting like everything is going to be okay. That just isn't right. Um, And then we talked about the blast. I'm sure that a lot of you have heard about what blast is, and we're going to go over that in a lot of detail coming forward. But luckily, the manager is no longer with us, because just he didn't really wrap his head around what I or what the brand was really looking for when it comes to taking care of the guest. And so we're going to get into kind of what that is moving forward. Um, you can skip to the next one, Mary. And guest recovery best practices. Um, I'm sure, like I said, many of you have seen Blast. Blast is kind of the staple for a lot of entry level managers. They go over it in training. Blast, it stands for believe, listen, apologize, satisfy, and thank. It's the best tool that you have in your arsenal when it comes to taking care of your guest. Um, it's not just a cute little thing, but it actually has real world ramifications when it comes to dealing with your guest. So we're going to dive into kind of what this means. The very first thing for Blast is believe, and I find that this is actually the hardest thing for our managers to do is to actually believe. The moment a guest complains about something, the managers go, oh, they're just trying to get something free. I don't believe that. My server is great. The bartenders know what they're doing. The kitchen, I have the best kitchen in the world. There's no way we could burn a Mongolian beef. Impossible. They're just trying to get something for free. But believing the guest is really the foundation of how you handle the guest. If you think they're lying, if you think that they're just trying to get something out of it, you're going to do more damage than you could possibly imagine. Um, Once you accept that they're telling the truth, then you can start to move on to how you're going to help them, how you're going to remedy the situation, and how you're going to get the guest to leave happy. Now, obviously, if the guest comes in once a week with the same complaints or a different complaint every single time, and they have a wallet full of BOGs because they get free OBs and they know how to play the system, that's a different conversation to have. You can definitely have that conversation at some point, but you really should treat that as a very, very rare exception to the rule. And the first step is always believing the guest when they have an issue that's brought forward. The next step, and I think that this one is probably the second hardest one for our managers, is listening. Stop and listen and let the guest talk all the way through. Um, it might just be that we're protective of our teams. I know I am, but when you're listening to a guest and they're giving you their comments or their concerns, don't get defensive. Don't interrupt them. Let them finish all the way through and talk front to back about what the situation is. Um, you don't want to step on somebody's toes. You don't want to start getting defensive. That's where the fight starts coming in, is when you don't let them finish or you start rebutting their commentary. Let them have their conversation. Um, and then at that point, you can respond. Make sure you stay level headed the entire time. I know that it's difficult because you'll have those guests that get really fired up. Sometimes they might even get a little bit aggressive, rude, or they'll use foul language. Don't get baited into anything. Just stay calm. Your body language is going to play a big part in it. If you come in with your arms folded and you're kind of leaning back, you're not smiling, the guests aren't going to feel like you're really engaged with them. So make sure you have eye contact. Make sure that you have kind of an open body stance. Make sure that you're smiling the whole time. It's important just how far a smile can go. And then let them know that you're listening. One way that I do that is every time I have a conversation with a guest that's upset, I'll kind of reply with what the conversation is about. Like if we burned a Mongolian beef, I'll say, so what you're telling me is we definitely overcooked the Mongolian beef and you just weren't a fan of it. That way they at least can acknowledge that you were listening to what they said. Sometimes you might not actually understand what they're saying for whatever reason. And so having that dialogue back and forth can help you drill into what their actual problems are. You don't need to ever defend yourselves. You don't ever need to justify anything because the guests don't actually, that's not what they're here for. They're not here to hear if you had 3 servers call out or if the kitchen was backed up or whatever. That's not the point. The point is just to listen at the beginning, let them know that you're paying attention, and then we'll move on to the next part, which is apologize. The apology is so important. I've had so many times where I'll get a really bad email. The host was rude, the server was bad, the bar drinks were weak, the food was terrible, top to bottom. And when I call them and the first thing I do is apologize, the entire conversation has a totally different tone. Sometimes that's all they want, is to hear an apology. And it can be something super simple, like, you know what, I am really sorry that we dropped the ball. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but just apologizing for whatever. If the guest didn't have a good time, that's on us. No matter how you slice it, that's on us. Um, it's if you put yourself in their shoes as a guest, you can understand sometimes where they're coming from. Where in my location, parking is a hassle. It's 15 bucks to park almost anywhere near my restaurant. On a weekend, you're on a long wait. Our food is not cheap. So there's a bunch of roadblocks to coming into my restaurant. And if they don't have a good time, I do take that a little personal and I want to apologize to them. Um, a sincere apology will usually diffuse a ton of the frustration that a guest has. And if you skip that part, it makes it seem like you don't care. We want to make sure that our guests understand that we genuinely care. Um, the only exception to that rule is if there is something like, for example, food poisoning, you don't want to apologize because you don't want to accept guilt. But at that point, you're just going to refer to your company's procedures, maybe take your notes, let them know that you're going to be in contact with the health department, things like that. But don't apologize for that. But for almost any other situation, you really want to apologize. Um, Step 4 is the most important, and that is satisfy. At the end of the day, the business we're in is taking care of people. That is what we do. If a guest leaves our building and they are not happy, whoever is in charge that day has failed. Bottom line, it's just not good enough. Especially in the climate we're in, with the economy the way that it is, with pricing the way that it is, everybody's going through that September swoon and it's carrying into October. We cannot afford to let our guests leave our building and not be happy. Um, Sometimes it's as simple as asking the guest what they would like you to what they would like to see. You know, what can I do for you? Maybe you don't know what they're looking for, just ask them. Um, you obviously are the final arbiter of what to do, but allowing them the opportunity to kind of call some shots a little bit, it will let them feel like they have a little bit of power in the situation. And sometimes that's what they're looking for. They just want to feel like you're going to take care of them. And that's totally fine. I will tell you this much, and I tell all my managers this. I would much rather you maybe go 10% over with generosity than go under with generosity. You're never going to hear a comment from your operating partner or from your market partner or your SDO. Brett Mangold is not going to email you saying you were too nice, but you will get a commentary if you don't do enough. You want to take care of these guests. I always tell everybody that comes in my restaurant, we are truly glad that you are here and we will do everything we can to make you want to come back. If your way of satisfying the guest is to keep that in mind, you will never, ever, ever, ever be wrong because the guest is always the most important thing. Take care of them. They're coming in here, they're dealing with all those things, and they're paying a lot of money. Take care of them. Never, ever, ever let an issue leave your doors unresolved because once they're gone, they might never come back. And if they never come back, you know what they're also going to do? They're going to go on social media. They're going to tell their friends. They're going to tell their family. They're going to tell their loved ones. Everybody that they know is going to hear about the terrible experience they had. And then they're going to hear about the terrible manager that couldn't take care of them. Another thing that I hate is when one of my managers can't get the job done and then they call and have to go above them to me. It kind of, chops my managers at the knees because now the guests know, oh, I shouldn't even go to this manager because they can't do anything for me. I have to go above them. I want all my managers to feel empowered to do anything to take care of the guest. And that's super, super important to me. At the end of the day, the guests are your guests. It will save you a lot of time, a lot of heartache just to take care of them then and there. And you won't have any kind of the negative things that when they take it home and they get upset about it, and they think about it more. Just take care of your guest. And then lastly is to thank your guest. I know that seems kind of weird, but thank them. A lot of times we can use our guest feedback in a way that we can train our teams. If you're getting a guest that maybe they order Mongolian beef and they say it's too tough, well, use that to your advantage. Are we marinating it the right way? Are we cutting it to spec or is it too thick and therefore it's getting cooked wrong? Um, our wok cooks don't even know how to cook it the right way. Same with our bar drinks. Um, at the end of the day, we can use our guest information to our benefit. So thank them for that. Sometimes it's not easy. I know when I go out, I don't really ask to talk to a manager, but sometimes maybe I should to let them know that there are some gaps in their service or gaps in the quality of their food. But they obviously care enough about our business to tell us when something isn't hitting the mark. They're giving us an opportunity to fix a problem. So thank them for that. Thank them for caring about our business, and then use that time to invite them back again. I'm a big advocate for using BOGs. If I give out, $50 in BOGs, they'll come back. They'll use those $50, then they'll spend another $100 on top of it. On top of that, they'll feel like, they were taken care of. So, you know, offer them, say, I'm so sorry. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Come back again. We'll do better next time. Like, give them that promise and put your word behind it that we're going to do better for you next time. This is our reputation that's on the line, and our guests work really hard for their money, and they're going to come in here and spend it. We want to thank them if they're going to take the time to tell us that we just didn't hit the mark. And so I think, like I said, the blast method, it really does matter. Believing our guests, listening to their problems. You really, really, really want to apologize and be sincere about it because we care. We want to make sure that whatever they need to do, we're going to satisfy them, and then we're going to thank them for that. That's really what it comes down to. And it honestly and truly does matter. I'm not the type of person, I do not love getting yelled at. I'm sure nobody does. But for the most part, if you stick to these tools, you're going to have a really successful time taking those negative moments and turning it into a positive. Really quick, we're going to have some practice, and I'm just going to kind of read some examples of things that kind of, here's real life situations, and I'll talk through like what I think, what I would do. And if you have any commentary, you can definitely jump on in. You have a manager on duty standing at the host desk, and Fiona approaches with an entree plate. She points out that there's a long brown hair in her table 51 is found in the Mongolian beef. What does the manager say to the guest? Obviously, first and foremost, you have to apologize. I am so sorry for that. One thing that I find to do is when I'll tell the guest, number one, I'm going to go back there and talk to the kitchen staff, because that kind of lets the guest know that we're going to not only just fix this problem, but we're also going to kind of get to the root of the problem. Maybe my culinary team wasn't wearing hairnets and hats. Maybe it was my server who ran the food, or my service assistant ran the food, and their hair isn't pulled back. We're going to let the guests know that we're going to not only fix your meal, but we're going to make sure that for future consideration, we're going to take care of it. Obviously, you're going to take care of that Mongolian beef, and maybe their whole meal was ruined because that Mongolian beef was one person's meal and a sesame chicken was another person's. Can I offer to make both of those fresh again for you, free of charge? We're going to take care of that for you. Again, you got to go above and beyond. If you've ruined somebody's experience, if it's a date night, or even if it's not, you just want to make sure that we're taking care of that guest. You want to talk to Fiona. Was she the one that was running the food? Did she see who dropped the food off? Because we have to find out where that hair came from. Go to the culinary team. Who prepped who did the marinade for the beef? Who was on the wok? Who was on the fryer? Find out whose hair it was, if it was anybody's, just so that we can kind of nip that in the bud. If you don't do the due diligence at that point, you're just setting yourself up to have another time where there's going to be another hair in another dish, and you got to comp that again. So if you take care of it at that point, you're just going to save yourself a lot of problem. And then definitely one thing I would recommend, 100%, if you are the manager that took care of that guest, then you are the manager that drops off that food. Stand by the window, make sure it comes out, make sure it looks right, and then drop that off yourself. So that, again, you own that. You're going to put your name on that, say this is the food that was prepared correctly. I'm going to drop this off for you now. That way the guests can look at it. They can see that you took the time to make sure it's perfect. Don't have somebody else run it out there because they don't know. It's so much better to have the manager go out there and drop that food off for them for sure. Okay. And at that point, make sure you're going to apologize again. Thank them for bringing it to your attention. If there's anything else we can do for you, we'll be happy to take care of you. Very, very simple. It's something that if you could get defensive, you put that hair in the dish yourself, more than likely they didn't do that. So make sure you're taking care of them. Number two, Tammy approaches a manager in a panic as she notices that her table ordered veggie lettuce wraps and they're eating chicken lettuce wraps. She knows all of the items ordered for this table were vegetarian and someone else dropped off the food. What's the first step? First step is you get over to that table and let them know immediately what the situation is. This is one of those times where you just own it. There's literally no argument to be made for why that mistake was made. You have a new runner. There was miscommunication. It doesn't matter. I personally have had a situation like this when I was a bartender, and one of my food runners dropped off the wrong thing, and it was a disaster. They hadn't eaten food. They hadn't eaten meat in 10 years. And I apologized. The manager came out. We rolled out the red carpet for them. We comped their whole bill. We felt so bad about it. You really, in a situation like this, the guest it might not even be a complaint because the guest doesn't know that there was a mistake made. But there was definitely a mistake made. So as far as the front facing issue, you apologize to the guest. You own this one. If it has to be that you have to comp a whole bill, then you got to comp a whole bill. You got to make sure that you know that we take this very seriously. It's similar to like a gluten-free allergy or something where if they have special needs and we say we're going to take care of them and then we don't, we own that 150%. If they get their whole bill comped, then we got to send them out BOGs, whatever we have to do to apologize. Maybe a handwritten letter, that will go a long way too. But on a situation like this, you have to go very far above and beyond to take care of these guests because that is something that is very, very, very serious. What do you say to the person that ran the food? Obviously, there needs to be some kind of training involved. There needs to be, did you not see the slice of lime? Did you not notice the difference in the mix between the chicken and the tofu? There has to be some kind of accountability. See if there was an expo that plated it up wrong. Find out kind of how this happened and it fell through the cracks. Because just like the hair in the food, if you don't nip this in the bud, all you're doing is waiting for the next time that a chicken lettuce wrap, veggie lettuce wraps gets mixed up, and you have to do this all over again. So this is going to fall on your plate to make sure that you really, as a manager, find out where kind of the communication and the actual execution fell apart and see where you can fix that. And those are the steps that you're going to take for future prevention. If that requires more training, more communication, if the manager has to be the expo for a little bit just to kind of train them on it, that's fine. But there just has to be some accountability. There might have to be a coaching and counseling. If this is not the first time that things like this have happened, maybe there has to be some write-ups involved. But that's one of the more serious ones. Things like allergies, things like dietary needs, those are very, very serious. And if we lose our guests on that, we really have nothing left. So we got to make sure that we pin that up really, really fast and very seriously. The last one, Jamie's ready to drop off a check and ask the manager on duty for a comp on a strawberry cucumber limeade. She shows that the guest has barely touched it. For this one, this is actually a very, very easy one. If the guest just has like a strawberry cucumber limeade or maybe an entree, whatever the case would be, off to the side, they're not going to complain about it. They just didn't like it. It should never really get to the point where a check needs to be dropped off and taken off, because when you're making your rounds as a manager, you should notice right away that there's a cup with a full beverage in it that's not being touched. But let's just say for the sake of argument, you missed it, and then you go back over there. When you walk up to the guest, just ask them how their meal was, and then say, I noticed you didn't drink your strawberry cucumber limeade. Tell me about it. Did you not like it? And they'll generally probably tell you, yeah, it was too sweet or it was too tart. First of all, you want to apologize to them. Let them know you're going to take it off the bill. That makes you look like a superstar because they didn't ask for it, but you're going to do that anyways. Would you like me to make another one fresh for you to take home with you? Those kind of really small things are going to make you look great and dialed in, and it costs you nothing. So make sure and then the guest is going to know that you care because you took your time to walk over there to take that off the bill, and that's going to just make them happy. But the bigger problem with that is, what was wrong with the strawberry cucumber limeade? It says, what follow-up would you make with the bartender? Well, there could be a few things. Did you batch your liquids beforehand? Who batched it? Maybe they added too much simple syrup and or lime juice, and the mixture wasn't right. Maybe they made it fresh and they just don't know the recipes, and you have to do some coaching and counseling on that one. If it was a food thing, same thing. If it was a food thing, again, check with the culinary team, see who was on the walk, who was on the drama, who was, all those things to see where the problem was. Because these are all three of these situations. If you just assume, oh, it's just a one-off thing, I'm not going to really dig into it, you're just going to set yourself up. If a server comes up and goes, hey, I need a card to take off a strawberry cucumber limeade, and you give them your card, and then you give them your card, and you give them your card, and at the end of the night, you have 7 strawberry cucumber limeades comped, like, what are you doing? What are you there for? Find out what the problem is so that you're not having to comp the same things over and over and over again. It takes 5 minutes to dig in and find out what the problem is, and then you can get it squared away. Maybe you just have to throw out that batch, make a new batch. Maybe you have to pull out those recipe cards and have that bartender walk you through, make one for me really quick, please, just so that they can see it and you can see that they know what it is. But ultimately, all of these situations here, they just, how you take care of the guests is super important. But then the work behind the scenes is also important because you don't want to have to keep doing this over and over again because that's where it wears you out. That's where it beats you up. If you keep having to comp Mongolian beefs over and over and over again, find out why. Don't just assume it was just we had 3 people that were just trying to steal from us. No, that's probably not the case. The case is probably either the squawk is too hot and we're burning them, or the meat was cut too thick and it's not cooking right. So find out what the real problem is in these, and then you can avoid these situations altogether. And then we're going to do the recap. Again, will people take advantage of our kindness? Sometimes they will, but you can't let that be, you know, that can't be the way that you operate, where everybody that has a complaint is just trying to steal from you. That's just number one, that's not true. And number two is you're going to set yourself up for a lot of really heavy confrontations with guests who are upset. Um, I always just try to own it as best that I can. I know that my name is on the door. If we messed up, I apologize sincerely and just own it. It's so much easier to say, I'm sorry, we messed up, I'm going to make it right, than to assume that everybody's lying. And then it turns out they're not lying. And then you just look like the biggest jerk in the world. No one wants to come back. Add blast to your toolbox. It's the easiest way to do it. Believe, listen. Believing and listening, those are things that a lot of the managers don't get right, and then it sets everything else off. But if you believe, you listen, you apologize, you satisfy the guest, and you thank them for it, 99% of the time, the guest is going to leave happy, and you're going to feel like a win. The best thing in the world is when you have a guest that's upset, and by the end of it, when they leave, they're thanking you. Like, it makes you feel like you've actually done something worthwhile. You're not just, standing around swiping cards and not doing anything. Having those interactions is really what's going to drive your metrics. It's really going to it makes all the difference in the world. And like it says right here, guest recovery just comes down to listening, empathy, and plain old manners. At the end of the day, I know I've said it, but it really is. We are truly glad that you are here, and we'll do everything we can to make you want to come back. Every decision that you make, if it has that in mind, you literally cannot go wrong. If all it takes is to make sure that you appreciate the guest that comes in and that you will do whatever it takes to make them come back, you're going to be fine. The answers are going to be right there. It's going to be fine. And then lastly, it takes practice. When I was a manager, when I was a bartender, one of the best things about being a bartender was that there's like this point where if there was a problem, I could only do so much. And then you go, you know what? I can't help you. Let me get a manager. And that was the best because it was kind of like tag team wrestling. I tag in my manager, they come in and they finish it off. But then all of a sudden, when you're the manager and you're the one that gets tagged in, you have to have a whole different set of tools. And so when you keep doing this, you're going to get more practice at it. You're going to get more confidence in it. And then all of a sudden, those kind of interactions where they feel like it's a fight, or they feel like it's someone's lying, or you feel like something isn't you're super uncomfortable, or you have anxiety, all those feelings will start to dissipate because you have the experience, you have the tools, you have the knowledge, and it just becomes easy. It's not a problem to take care of a guest. That's what you do. The last thing is on Workday, we have a guest recovery e-learning course for everybody. Now, I know it's something that the MITs take during their training, but honestly, it's just one of those things where having a little bit more knowledge under your belt is never going to hurt anybody. It's kind of like when you finish a sake course and you feel like a sake master. Well, take the guest recovery course. You'll have a little bit more confidence. You'll have a little bit more knowledge behind you, and it'll just make everything a little bit easier. Doesn't take too long. But you can pop in there, throw it in there, start it up. Just give it a go. See how you do. You might be humbled if you're not as great at guest recovery as you thought you were, or maybe you're better than you thought you were, and you can kind of use those tools to your advantage. So yeah, that's what I've got for you guys. Q&A if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nick. That was wonderful. I know a lot of you may have had an opportunity to pick up a practice or two, but like you said, blast is really the way to go. It breaks it down nice and simple for you. And if you miss any one of those steps, I mean, you gave plenty of examples of how the situation may go awry, but like Nick said, if you have any questions, please reach out to Nick. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the Long Beach location, but he is a professional at guest recovery. So please do reach out to him if you need anything. And thank you again, Nick, for a wonderful presentation today. But thank you all for everyone on the line, and we will catch you all again in a couple of weeks. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
Goodbye.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Bye, Nick.
Bye, Bruno.